Food is one of the most fundamental necessities for life on this planet, including human beings. As being acknowledged, Malaysia has a high population where it needed to continue and manage food supply for people in order to overcome any possible problem. According to ADS 2020, COVID-19 pandemic makes food supply one of the important issues that needed to be resolved. There is a possibility of deficiency or lack of food supply in some areas around the country because people are limited to their home and some people will stockpile their food supply in their home, which can lead to deficiency or lack of food supply in various areas around Malaysia.
The movement restriction imposed by the COVID-19 were a major setback for our food supply chain, and while the immediate crisis has been resolved, the tale is far from over. How food secure is Malaysia, and are we prepared for the next crisis? But first, what is food security? According to the United Nations, it's a concept that measures whether a country and its people have physical, social, and economic access to food that fulfill the preferences, nutritional, as well as the dietary needs at a given time. Food security is not just about amount of food, it's multifactorial. It will be depend on four basic things, which is the availability, access, utilization, and stability.
The issue occurred is either Malaysia has enough food supply or not. As we know, ever since the pandemic COVID-19 hit the world, almost every country are facing a food crisis. When business started to shut down due to the pandemic, supply system was strained and global food prices began to rise. During the MCO in Malaysia, agriculture sector has remained open to ensure the food supply is not disrupted, but it has restricted the movement of workers and the logistics of food supply. Currently, food supply in Malaysia is enough. However, if there is serious food crisis happen in the world, Malaysia will have a shortage of food supply. This is because Malaysia rely more on imported food. In 2020, Malaysia has reported 55.5 billion ringgit on food imports in order to meet the consumers' demand in the country. For example, rice. Malaysia imported rice from Thailand and Vietnam. Even though Malaysia have their own rice production, it is still not enough to cover or accommodate with the country consumer daily basis. Another example is chicken. The selling price of chicken is currently 8.9 per kilogram, which the government issue a subsidies to cover production costs borne by the industry. The rising prices of food such as chicken is because Malaysia imported fertilizers and animal feed from abroad. Moreover, due to increase of fertilizers price that the farmers need to cover by themselves, which cause the increase of agriculture production costs. The reason for this is because the government has not given any subsidies to the farmers, hence they need to cover the production costs by themselves. The Russia-Ukraine war also has led to a shortage of full food supply. In Malaysia, it has led to increase of price of foods that are imported from other countries. This is because Ukraine and Russia is the largest producer of fertilizers, wheat and grain. Due to many restrictions during the war, it has interrupted the food supply in the world. The war between these two countries has contributed in a 30% increase in world food prices.
When the population is getting increased, surely the demand will be high also, which eventually also lead the need for food supply to increase. One of the consequences or implications if there is no enough food supply or known as shortage happen in a country, there will be an increasing in price for food products. Malaysians are staring at more expensive grocery bills with some basic foodstuff in short supply and subject to rapidly soaring prices, according to the STAR 2022. As acknowledged with the current situation in Malaysia, there is continuous rise for food price inflation. Little did everyone away, the increasing of food price was due to the shortage of certain food products in the market. In economic terms, it is normal if the businesses increase the price for food products, especially if this food product was essential things for the society. This is due to no matter how high the price was imposed for that particular food products, the people will still buying those products. Pursuing this further, if the issue of increasing in price of food product getting worse without any proper solution, sooner or later this will lead to the inflation. When the food products start to show its changes in the price for a long period of time, a country must weigh and take a proper measure in order to avoid an inflation from happen. Inflation can be defined as when there is an increasing in the price of a product over a period of time given. When inflation happens, most of things that we can buy will be reduced than before the inflation take place. Meaning to say, the inflation will reduce the power of purchasing by consumer. They can no longer buy a certain food product at RM50 today for tomorrow. However, if the consumer earn income as high as the inflation rate or even more than the inflation rate, then their purchasing power will not be reduced as they can still buying things as usual. According to Tan Siumung 2022, Malaysia's inflation, as measured by the Consumer Price Index or known as CPI, increased by 2.3% in April 2022 from a year earlier, led by higher food prices, according to the Department of Statistics Malaysia on Wednesday, May 25, 2022. Furthermore, the other implication faced by Malaysia if there is shortage happen in our food supply is the amount of food import will be increasing. Generally, depending too much on food import is not good for a country's economic, which eventually could lead to a trade deficit. In 2020, Malaysia imported RM55.5 billion in food products compared to RM33.8 billion of exports, translating to a large deficit of 21.7 billion. Such a trend is worrying as over the last decade, food imports in Malaysia have accumulated to RM482.8 billion, while export amounted to 269 billion, according to Amanda Yeoh 2022. As we can see from the statistics stated, even on a normal situation, we already highly depending on food import. This situation explains how the higher food import associated with the trade deficit. The trade deficit happens when a country is buying more goods from other country than it is selling. Even though food import is important to meet the demand, we must remember that a higher trade deficit consequently will decrease the value of local currency. This is because we only buying from another country, but no country interested in our export food products.
Malaysia population has risen. The more society in one country, the higher the demand for food. In order to have sufficient food supply, the government should put more focus on improving the agriculture sector. It can be done by introducing and utilize more modern technology that exists in order to improve the agriculture sector in the country so that can produce more food in accordance with the society needs. As an example, farm maintenance technology, correctly selecting right produce, production and innovation technology, and also in terms of information and communication technology such as sensor, artificial intelligence, and also the Internet of Things. By doing this, it will increase the productivity in agriculture sector and indirectly ensure the food supply. Build smart factory as well as encourage small and medium industry will encourage more local supplier and indirectly minimize expenditure in import sector. Besides that, another initiative that can be done is by capitalize more urban farming. Urban farming as an activity that take advantages from unused urban places to produce more food. As being acknowledged, more than half the Malaysian population are now residing in cities, so it makes sense for the government to begin growing more food in any location where people are increasingly congregating. They can utilize any empty space in their home or working place for an urban farm, even though there are some places in Malaysia that apply these practices, but not include every cities. We can look at the Cuba country, where they have successfully turned their city not only as a urban farming, but also become one of the largest producer of vegetable for their own country. Not only that, Malaysia Malaysia also might follow Singapore lead by deploying hydroponic on parking garage rooftop and putting urban farm in underutilized structure. The result from vertical rooftop system will be more higher, which estimated 4 times more than the traditional farming, since it's only required a quarter of space of regular farm to produce the same number of crops. Indoor vertical farming within the existing building not only reduce over-reliance on import and reduce carbon emission, but it also permit local food production as a part of the supply chain. The government need to deliver guidance and instructional that promote the joy of urban farming by develop into workshop, demos, or expos. So, to minimize the import expenditure and indirectly ensuring and increasing access to fresh local food, the government should start to implement more urban farming nationwide. Lastly, is by reduce the amount of food waste. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, food waste is one of the main problems that lead to food shortage. As for Malaysia, the Solid Waste Management and Public Cleansing Corporation had mentioned that the daily amount of food waste is more than enough to fill 5 to 7 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Means that more than 17,000 tons or 45% from the 38,000 tons of domestic waste are come from the food waste. In order to curb this situation, the government and citizens must work together to decrease the amount of food waste to secure the food supply for our country. The government can implement or continue various types of campaign either through media, social, poster, talk, and so on in order to increase the awareness of food waste among the citizens. Example, Value Food and No Waste campaign that has been done by the Solid Waste Management and Public Cleansing Corporation. Besides that, the society also needs to do their responsibility in reducing food waste by starting to make grocery lists so that they only buy what they should buy, using a leftover that is still in a good condition, and manage their daily meals according to their needs so that they can utilize any food that is near to its expiration date. Having a good strategy for managing and reducing the amount of food waste in the country will not only help to avoid any global warming or pollution, but it also will help to secure the food supply in Malaysia, since food waste will reduce the availability of food system as well as reduce resources that will be needed to produce the food, such as water, land, energy, and many more.
Pandangan saya mengenai dengan masalah kekurangan makanan di negara kita ni, saya berpandangan, pada pandangan saya lah yang sebagai rakyat biasa ni, sebenarnya kita punya makanan ni cukup dalam negara. Cuma kemungkinan ada satu permainan ekonomi dalam kalangan pemain-pemain industri makanan di negara kita ni yang cuba dia manipulasi itu ekonomi dengan harapan satu hari nanti ataupun selepas itu ada berlaku kenaikan harga dan akan menguntungkan pemain-pemain industri makanan. Contohnya macam dikatakan di negara kita ni kekurangan bekalan makanan ayam. Jadi para pengeluar yang terlibat dalam industri makanan ayam ni, kemungkinan yang saya faham lah, saya bukan orang ekonomi, dia cuba stokkan barang-barang ayam ni dan kemudian akan orang cari, orang minta, permintaan akan tinggi. Bila permintaan tu tinggi, jadi secara tidak langsung harga ayam tu akan meningkat. Kemungkinan akan berlaku begitu.
From my perspective, I don't really think Malaysia have enough food supply, be it for the present or for the future, because nowadays, due to the amount of natural disaster that keep on happening in Malaysia, we can see that our food chain was buckling as the pace for the increase of supply can no more keep up to the increase of demand. And since our country relies heavily on food import, as our budget for import of foodstuff keep on increasing, I think that it is clear that Malaysia indeed does not have enough food for the present as well as for the future.
As being stated, food supply in Malaysia is enough. According to Abu Bakar 2020, there are still stocks of rice and other grains in Malaysia, and the price of food has not increased much from before the crisis. However, if there is a serious food crisis happen in the world, Malaysia will have a shortage of food supply, and it also causes inflation and affects our economy. As a result, strict monitoring of food prices by local authorities and relevant departments should be established in order to prevent further food shortage. The government must ensure the delivery of agricultural inputs, especially feed. It will ensure that trade flows smoothly and that the country can take full advantage of international markets to secure food supply and demand. Meeting these needs will enable the country to meet the expectations of its population.